Hello, everybody. I'm Nicholas Coley, and I'm here with Blake Henderson. And today we're bringing you our Week 5 college football update, and we're going to get right into it. So, Blake, give me your thoughts on UGA.
I think we all knew that Georgia was going to be good, but I don't think we knew they were going to be this good, as they are already in the talks of being the dark horse for the college football playoff. I mean, they're ranked number 7, so they're right there. What got us to be ranked number 7 is that we're 4-0 with big wins at Notre Dame, 20-19 we won, and another big win at home versus Mississippi State, 31-3. Next week we're playing at Tennessee. I wanted to get Nick's comments on that.
Yeah, I don't think UGA will struggle all that much with Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee is a strong team on either side of the ball. They do have a talented wide receiver in Marquez Callaway and a talented running back in John Kelly who could potentially create some matchup problems. But so far, I've seen a very dominant UGA defense that's fast with guys like Raquan and Lorenzo. So I just UGA. If I were them, I wouldn't stress over Tennessee too much. Yes, it is a road game, but Tennessee just hasn't shown at all this year that they can be a difficult team to compete with.
Another big note on that Tennessee game is that Tennessee's head coach Butch Jones, this game could be riding on whether or not he's going to be at Tennessee for much longer. And one thing he has to prepare for is who's going to be the quarterback for Georgia this year. This game, sorry. Kirby Smart's been very vague when asked about it. We still don't know if Eason's even healthy enough yet. We do think he is. But are they even going to start Eason this game, or are they going to start Fromm?
If I was UGA, which I'm obviously not, but if I was Kirby, I would start from just because the offense has been clicking, especially against Mississippi State, which is to me the best Fromm has looked all year. And also they don't really ask Fromm to do much. He only threw 12 passes against Mississippi State, and the offense was just on fire. I think when you have a strong running game like they do, you can plug in any quarterback really. But right now, I wouldn't disrupt the rhythm they have because that's what offenses rely on. They rely on rhythm and consistency and guys staying healthy. So this isn't the time for Eason to come back.
I agree. Fromm's been kind of clicking on all cylinders thus far. And you got to look at that touchdown to interception rate, 7-1, which is really good. And plus, you got to look at, even though it was only 3 possessions, I believe it was, against a much inferior App State opponent, Eason didn't look all that well against that team. I wanted to move on to the Florida game, which is another big game. A lot of people are saying this is whoever wins this game is going to be in Atlanta at the end of the year, being the champions of the SEC East. Although our last big game of the year is at number 13 Auburn, who I think we're going to lose against, and I think that's going to make our record 11-1. I think that's what we're going to finish off the schedule with. Nick, what do you think Georgia's going to finish off with?
At least so far as I've been watching UJ play, I don't see them losing the game. I think they have a pretty favorable schedule. And, like many people have said, if this isn't the year that Georgia wins the SEC East, then what year are they going to win it? I can't see them losing the game. They might trip up, but if they do trip up, I would just think they underachieve.
Also want to put in that even if we lose to Auburn or whether we not, if we're looking at that playoff, the only thing that really matters if we make it to the SEC championship is that we have to prepare for Alabama if we won't even have a chance in the SEC in the college football playoff. Sorry. One big game that did not make our big games list is that Georgia Tech game at the end of the year, which always interests me. What's your opinion on it?
I am personally a Georgia Tech fan, and as impressive as I think the offense has been this year, and this is really the best I've seen the triple option under Paul Johnson during his tenure at Georgia Tech, which is a pretty bold statement to make. But the defensive side of the ball, I can't see them slowing down a combination of Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, and DeAndre Swift, who has really come on these past few games.
I mean, Georgia Tech does have that lethal offense, as ESPN ranks them as number 16 in the country in total offense. I mean, they Tennessee barely got by him, and a lot of people say to beat Georgia Tech, you got to be the first person out because you have months to prepare for them. And Georgia's the last team on the schedule, so they almost have no time to prepare for that lethal offense led by Daquan Marshall.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how Kirby schemes against Tech this year because last year, Tech went to Athens and they beat them. And, there was just a lot of issues going on with that game overall. But I do think this Georgia team is much better and their defense looks much more disciplined. And they have performed well against teams that like to run the ball, like Mississippi State. Mississippi State couldn't run the ball against them. And they stopped the run against Notre Dame, another team that has a very strong running game. And, Georgia Tech's offense is the running game. So I'm not saying they'll stop Georgia Tech 100% because Georgia Tech tends to show up to that game. There hasn't been a blowout in this series in a few seasons, but if there is going to be a blowout again, it might be this year.
All right. Since you are the Georgia Tech fan, let's move on to Georgia Tech and talk about how they've done and their outlook for them.
Yeah, so Georgia Tech opened up their season against Tennessee, and they were looking like they were going to win that game for a while, but because of a couple turnovers and the defense's inability to slow down Marquez Callaway and John Kelly, they came up short in double overtime. But overall, I think this Georgia Tech team has tremendous potential with Taquan Marshall and Cavante Benson, especially after Dedrick Mills was dismissed for the program. People were very low on them, but Cavante Benson and Taquan have really they've changed perception down there at Bobby Dodd. And Taquan Marshall he has 9 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing touchdowns and 12 total touchdowns on the year throughout 3 games. That's pretty insane. And Cavante Benson has rushed for over 340 yards and found the end zone 3 times on his own. The biggest issue with this Georgia Tech team so far has been turnovers, which happens in an option offense, but it can also really hurt your offense because this isn't a type of team that plays well from behind. But as I look over Georgia Tech's schedule, they do have tough games remaining against Miami, Clemson, and Virginia Tech, and obviously Georgia, all teams that are ranked in the top 15 as of right now in the AP poll. So Georgia Tech does have a difficult slate. They did go and beat Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech last year, but I think this Virginia Tech team is a little bit better, or a lot better. It's hard to know at this exact moment because they haven't looked great in every outing this year. But I do think Georgia Tech has the potential to pull off some of these upsets. But I do want to see how they look against UNC this coming week. But I think if they can beat Miami, that this Georgia Tech team does have the potential to compete in the ACC and potentially go to that championship game. But I think it's too early, and this Georgia Tech team just hasn't played the type of competition they need to prove that. And their defense has been pretty all over the place. They showed up in the first half against Tennessee, and then they disappeared in the second half, but then they had strong performances against a Jacksonville State, which they have a pretty good running back in Rock Thomas, a guy who used to be over there at Auburn. And then they had a very strong performance against Pitt, only allowing 1 touchdown. And that was on the opening drive. It went for 76 yards, and then they didn't allow another score after that. So I don't know where I see this Georgia Tech team going right now. Right now, I have them going 8-3. I don't really. Obviously, I think one of those losses is going to come against Georgia this year. But right now, I don't know where those other 2 losses will come from. But overall, that's my take on Georgia Tech. And we're going to move on to Georgia Southern. So first, I'm going to say, Blake, do you have anything to say about Georgia Southern?
Georgia Southern's they are not looking strong. I expected them to lose to somebody like Auburn at the beginning of the year and even Indiana last game. But when they lost to New Hampshire, that was just kind of the nail in the coffin of the way they're playing this year. They're just not good this year. That's the only thing that you can say about them. And some of that has to point to that head coach, Tyson Summers.
Yeah, Georgia Southern has definitely underwhelmed. The offense has looked completely lost at times. They've had trouble getting into the end zone, and their defense, while they did have a pretty strong performance against Auburn, now that's kind of showing not to maybe be that impressive because Mercer had also had a pretty strong defensive performance against Auburn. Auburn's offense has not been spectacular at all. They've pretty much been below average. But yeah, Georgia Southern's offense, which used to be kind of their pride, and this Georgia Southern team was really on the rise before Tyson Summers had came in. Now it looks like they're taking some sort of downfall, and it's kind of sad to see. Tyson Summers, his buyout is $900,000 this year, and I think it drops to $600,000 in year three. So I can't see him being fired in the short term, even if and I have them winning one game this year. Even if they pull off that record, I just don't see Summers going anywhere because of the amount of money the school would have to pay to get off of his contract. And do you have anything else to add, Blake?
Much of the same. Just Tyson Summers needs to go. I mean, that's just kind of been the downfall of the program. I also have them only winning one game, but they just have to figure out something to if they want to turn this around.
Yeah, and it is especially frustrating for the fans who, after coming off a GoDaddy bowl victory, they had such high expectations, and they haven't even come close to living up to them. And that Georgia State loss last year was really painful, and this year they've looked even worse than they did last year, in my opinion. So now we're going to move on to Georgia State. So Blake, tell me, do you have anything to say about Georgia State?
Well, Georgia State actually won a game, unlike Georgia Southern. They just won a game against Charlotte last week. They lost to Tennessee State in their home opening of their new stadium. They obviously lost to Penn State. Even though they're not going to be fantastic, I do think they'll be a little bit better than Georgia Southern. They have some more upside to them, more potential. But
yeah, and no, keep going.
But it's just they're not going to be great. But I see potential, and I feel like they're kind of becoming slowly on the rise.
Yeah, and the thing to remember about this Georgia State team is they're kind of going through a little soft reboot with their program. They brought in a new coach. They moved into a new stadium. They're trying to rebrand this program and bring some new life into it. So they're probably not going to be a very competitive team right away, but there's a good chance they're headed in the right direction. It's too early to tell, though, and it might take a couple years before we can fully evaluate the Elliott hire and where this program is headed. So
I also put in that a lot of people, kind of forget this, that Georgia State, hasn't been a football program that long. I want to say they opened in 2010. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're relatively new, but they're still somewhat on the up and up.
Yeah, that's for sure. And they had a rough first few years, and that's why it's kind of crazy. They're already trying to rebrand their program, but that's what they're doing. They're trying to bring change to it because they really want to get this thing going. They want to get fans excited because they've had extremely low fan turnouts, and they report sellouts, but you can look at pictures. They obviously don't come anywhere close to that, but they have to report high attendance because if you don't have certain attendance numbers, you can't be an FBS team per the NCAA rules. So, obviously, I want to see all these teams in Georgia succeed. Even as a Tech fan, it's always fun when your state has competitive football, especially with all the talent in Atlanta and Georgia as a whole. One of the most talented and productive states when it comes to football prospects. So I don't have anything else to say. And Blake, if you have anything else to say, you can add it now.
All I've got to say is that this is going to be an interesting year in the state of Georgia for college football.
All right, so I'm Nicholas Coley, and I did this video with Blake Henderson. Like the video and tell us what you think. And this has been our college football week 5 update. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.